We've all heard the horror stories. Somebody buys a house, and within a year, they're drowning in repair bills they never saw coming. And if you haven't heard these stories, congratulations, you're about to. So, brand new home, never lived in. Within months, they have a sewage backing up into their shower because nobody told them that new builds need sewer scopes too. The baffles in the septic system were never set correctly. New doesn't always mean proper. A family buys a property as an investment. They close, celebrate, and start planning their retirement. Then the city shows up uninvited, as cities do, and come to find out the bottom floor was never permitted. So the building is now condemned, and it's worth a fraction of what they paid. The city didn't really care about their retirement plan. The buyer walks into an open house, falls in love. It's a beautiful home. It's move-in ready, smells like a Yankee candle, and bad decisions. What nobody tells them is that the roof has 5 years left, the furnace is at the end of life, and every appliance is on borrowed time. Within 5 years, they'll have $35,000, maybe $40,000 in repairs that they didn't budget for. The candle failed to disclose this at the open house. Buyer needs strong water pressure. It's a medical necessity, not just a preference. They find the perfect house, make an offer, sign the contracts, and then at the inspection find out the water pressure won't work. So the contract falls through. It was wasted time, and they're back to square one because there was no one testing the water pressure at the showing. These are not rare horror stories. These are things that happen to buyers every single day. Buyers whose agent walked through the same houses and had no way of knowing what they were looking at. Here's something that might surprise you. According to Zillow research, first-time buyers expect to spend between $10,000 to $15,000 on their new home after closing, but the actual average is nearly $27,000. That's not a rounding error. That's a big hit to a piggy bank difference between $15,000, $12,000, or $27,000. It's almost double. So the number one thing that people said they wish they had known before they bought was the true cost of owning the home, not just buying it, but owning it. And if you're watching this, you're already ahead of that curve. So who is this for? This is for you if you're thinking about buying a home and you want to go into it with your eyes wide open. If you want to understand what you're really buying, not just the listing price, but the full picture. If you want peace of mind that you're not about to become house poor, and if you want an agent who will tell you the truth, even when it's hard to hear. This is not for you if you've already got it all figured out and just need someone to rubber stamp your decisions. I don't own a rubber stamp. No hard feelings, but this isn't for you. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 secrets, not the kind that require a non-disclosure agreement. They're not actually secrets. The information exists, but most agents just don't know the numbers. Secret 1 is how to avoid a money pit. Is it a deal breaker? Does it just look like one? Because the most expensive mistake a buyer can make isn't paying too much for a house. It's not knowing what's inside it. Secret number 2, how much house can you actually afford? The mortgage plus the maintenance plus replacements without becoming house poor. Because the bank will tell you what you qualify for, but there's a number that matters more, and I'm going to help you find it. Secret number 3 is a simple tool I've developed that gives you peace of mind when purchasing a home, because knowing the information is one thing, but having a way to actually use it when you're standing in a house you love is something else entirely. So before I go any further, I want to be straight with you about something. You might be wondering why I'm sharing all this for free. The honest answer is I'm a real estate agent. I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart. Well, partly, but mostly this is just what I do for a living. And the best way I know how to show you what it's like to work with me is to actually show you. So that's what we're doing today. And if you get to the end of this and think, I want that person in my corner when I buy a house, there will be a way to make that happen. But right now, let's just get into it. Let's learn some stuff here. So I'm Allison Beers. I'm the Peace of Mind Realtor, and I really don't use that title lightly. I'm a licensed real estate agent, a certified home inspector with nearly 1,000 inspections across the greater Seattle area, and I'm a life coach. Those 3 things together are why I can make the peace of mind promise. Most agents know the market. I know the market, and I've been in nearly 1,000 crawl spaces. It's the last frontier where no woman has gone before. And I understand the emotional side of making one of the biggest financial decisions of your life because I'm trained for that too. And I've been through it. So I'm a nerd. We're looking at number one here. I'm a nerd. Since I was a kid, I wanted to invest in real estate and build houses. Houses are just how I'm wired. I know how homes were built decade by decade, what materials were used, how they were put together, what to watch for in each era because of the number of houses I've been in this area. I own an investment property. My husband and I go on walks and spend the whole time picking apart the houses we pass. This is what we do for fun, folks. Like I said, I'm a nerd. And I trained my daughter to read house exteriors also when she was working with me. She didn't necessarily ask for the skill, but she now has it anyway. So you're welcome, sweetie. All right, next. I'm a human. I've moved 20 times. I've got 6 kids. I get bored easily. That's all I'll say about that part. I've lived in enough homes across this country to know what works, what doesn't work, what you don't notice until you've been there 6 months. I helped build the home with Habitat for Humanity, as you can see in that lovely picture. I've done maintenance on my own homes. I've got into inspections because I needed a steady income at the time, so it wasn't the time to become an agent yet. It wasn't really a master plan. It just turned out to be a really good practical decision. So there's me being human. And thirdly, I'm in your corner. I'm so glad I got my inspection knowledge first because now I can bring something real to the table that most agents simply can't. We'll talk a little bit about that more later. It's not because they're not good at their jobs. There are so many good agents out there, but they didn't spend years in crawl spaces and studying houses deeply before they started writing offers. So I'll tell you the truth, even when it's hard to hear, because that's how I started and that's how I intend to continue. And I'll even let you know if I really think you should walk away from a house, but I will only base that recommendation based on what is important to you. So there's me. So all those scenarios that we talked about in the beginning, I was a part of them all. The new build with the sewage backing to the shower, I recommend a sewer scope on every home, including new builds, because I've done them and I found exactly this problem. Like I said, new doesn't always mean proper. The condemned property, I've seen firsthand multiple times what unpermitted work can do to a property and to the people who bought it. And I know the signs to check for. So the house that we talked about also that had $35,000 to $40,000 in near-term costs, I'm running replacement timelines in my head before I get out of the car. So when you work with me, you'll never walk into a house without knowing what it's really going to cost you, whether you want to know or not. So the buyer who needed water pressure, I have the tools to test that at this showing, and I'm actually working with someone who has this exact need. So there's no waiting for inspection. We can tell at the first showing if this house is going to work or not. No wasted time, no wasted contracts, no starting over. Choosing the right real estate agent is one of the most important decisions you'll make in this process. And I say that as someone who learned it firsthand as a buyer before I was ever an agent. Years before I became an agent, my own realtor gave me incorrect information about my water heater. She told me the drain needed a pipe to the ground. But what she didn't know, and what I didn't know yet either, is that the requirement was specifically for the temperature and pressure relief valve, and it needed to be, within 6 inches of the ground. Mine was fine, but she had been looking at the drain rather than the temperature and pressure relief. So she had been an agent for, I think, over 5 years, and she got that wrong. She wasn't trying to mislead me. She just didn't know the difference between a drain and a safety device that keeps your water heater from blasting through the roof. So go look up some videos because they blast through the roof if they don't have this working right or if they don't have it. So to be fair, this is not on the real estate licensing exam because nothing about actual houses is on the licensing exam. Choose someone who knows houses, not just the market. Okay, so most agents, they can see a water stain. They just don't know what it means all the time. And I'm not saying I always know either. Sometimes it needs further evaluation, but sometimes it needs $200 caulk job or a paint job. Sometimes it's a $20,000 moisture problem. I've seen the gamut. I know what to look for. Most agents can see an old furnace. They just don't know if it has 2 years left, 2 months. Not that I can divine the future, but I know the estimated lifespans and kind of what you can expect in general. I see the same things everyone else sees. I just know what I'm looking at. When I walk into a house built in 1928, I already know there's probably some knob and tube wiring, even if it's been partially updated. I know what that means for insurance. I know which electrical panels have been recalled and what happens to your homeowner's insurance if the house has one. I know how houses were put together, what to watch for in each era. And the 1970s were quite creative, but we'll leave it at that for now. That's a whole other webinar. That's not something you learn for a real estate license. That's nearly 1,000 deep dives into homes. So I can't guarantee that there won't be any problems, but I can help you discover the knowable issues with confidence. If you go search questions to ask your realtor right now, you'll find lists of things like how many homes have you sold and what average days are they on the market right now. Like those things matter, but here's what I want you to understand. Every agent has access to the same market data. We all have it. Zillow has it. Redfin has it. Your neighbor who scours Zillow and Redfin daily has it. Market knowledge is kind of table stakes now. There's information and data everywhere. So what's harder to find, though, is an agent who will sit down with you and say, here's what this specific house is likely to cost you to own. Not just the mortgage, the roof that has 7 years left, the furnace that's on borrowed time, the sewer line nobody scoped. That's not market data. That's judgment. That's experience. And that's the number that actually determines whether you can afford this house long-term or whether you're going to become house poor. So if you've ever watched a webinar like this before, you know this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you that every other real estate agent is terrible and I'm the only one who can save you. I'm not going to do that, partly because it's true, but it's also exhausting. And there are good agents out there, but you also deserve to go into this process knowing what to look for. So instead of telling you to hire me, I'm going to give you 6 questions to ask any agent before you sign a buyer broker agreement, including me. So number 1, do you see your job as getting me into a house or getting me into the right house? Number 2, after we close, are you someone I can still call if I have questions? Number 3, how do you help me make a confident decision when I'm overwhelmed? Because you will get overwhelmed in this process. 4, will you tell me the truth even when it's not what I want to hear? 5, how comfortable are you interpreting an inspection report? And how do you help me know which items are the most important? And number 6, how do you help me understand the true monthly cost of owning a specific home and not just the mortgage? So those are good questions to ask that are very specific to homes that you might be interested in. And I'd love for you to ask them to me. So let's talk about a money pit. Let's talk about what a deal breaker actually is, because each of these could make you house poor if you're not properly considering them. And I think most buyers have this wrong, and most agents too, but that's a different webinar. A deal breaker is not a house with problems. Every house has problems. A deal breaker is a house where the problems prevent you from getting what you need and want from this house at a price you can actually afford to pay. So that changes everything about how you walk through a house. You're not looking for perfection. You're not looking for a clean inspection report. You're not going to ever get one of those. You're asking one question. Can this house be what I need it to be? And what is it going to cost me to get there? And then, can I afford it? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the number is manageable. Sometimes the number is more than you bargained for. And sometimes the answer is just no, this house can't be what I need it to be. And then you move on. That's a deal breaker. It could even be a beautiful house that's a deal breaker because it's not right for you. And then everything else in between that is just negotiating. That's it. So buying a house always carries risk. There are things you can't know until you've lived there, things that an inspector can't find from being there for 3 hours. You're not going to necessarily know how the house handles a particularly wet winter. You're not necessarily going to know whether that hairline crack in the foundation is 20 years old and stable, or is it brand new and moving. I can't eliminate the unknown. Nobody can. So don't think that I'm promising that. I'm not. Zillow can't even promise that. Not even its algorithm that never doubted itself. But here's what I can do. I can help you eliminate things that are knowable. So the roof that may have 5 years left, the furnace that is at the end of its expected lifespan, the appliances that are one repair bill away from replacement, the knob and tube wiring, your insurance company is going to have a problem with, and the galvanized water lines that are corroding from the inside out right now. Any of those are totally knowable. They're not surprises, they're facts. They're sitting right there in the house, waiting for someone who knows what to look for and how to interpret it. So that's the difference between a money pit and a calculated decision. So there are a few different categories of deal breakers. The first one we'll talk about is the physical deal breaker. These are things that might require the walls to come down. So let me give you some specific things that fall into this knowable category. Knowable category. Things that aren't automatically deal breakers, but they require real evaluation before you commit. So like I mentioned, knob and tube wiring. It's common in homes built before 1950, more common before the 1940s. And it's sometimes present even after updates have been done. It's not automatically dangerous. It depends on how it's been handled. But a lot of insurance companies won't cover a home that has it. And if you need to replace it, like fully replace it, you're opening up walls to do so. So that's a significant project. It takes time, takes money, right? And the electrician will definitely use professional language, but the bill won't feel professional. Not that I'm saying it's a deal breaker on its own. You just have to know what you're getting into. And what you find in those walls is between you and the house. I have seen some things. Really. Galvanized water lines is another one. These corrode from the inside out and will sometimes spring leaks. You won't see it happening. What you'll see is rust-colored water when you first come on it or turn on a tap, and reduced water pressure over time. If it's slowly getting less and less water pressure, you know your pipes they're about to be toast. So eventually they'll fail. It'll stop completely, or like I said, it'll spring a leak somewhere in the walls. It's like the house's circulatory system that's quietly just giving up. So how far along that process is depends on the house and how it's been used, but it is a knowable thing. If you know what to look for, you won't necessarily know how many years you have left, but you'll know, okay, that's something I need to plan on replacing at some point. Another thing in this physical deal breaker could be active moisture intrusion into the framing. Not old water standing as much. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but active moisture and wood that is soft and beginning to deteriorate, or mold on structural members. That can be an indication, but isn't always. This one can compound quietly and can get really expensive depending on how widespread it is. Because if you leave it alone, it doesn't just stay the same. It gets worse and more expensive, and it's not waiting patiently. Like the bio growth friend from earlier, it's already working against you. So these things aren't necessarily deal breakers on their own. They become deal breakers when the cost to address them combined with everything else the house needs exceeds what the house is worth, what it's worth to you, or what you can afford. That's the calculation. That's the calculation I can help you make. So let me show you. You've been looking at this slide, but let me now show you what this physical deal breaker looks like and why it was only a deal breaker because of one specific goal of the client. There's a rundown restaurant, looks something like this. Water was running into the electrical panel, which is a reminder, water and electricity are not friends. If they do decide to join forces, though, you can kiss your home inspector goodbye if they're not careful. There were also rotting floorboards. We almost fell through the floor, literally. We had to walk around certain areas because the supporting members were gone. So the client wanted to restore this restaurant and be able to use it as a restaurant. I wanted to hand him a hard hat and a reality check because it was so run down. It would be extremely expensive to repair this thing. So was it a deal breaker? Only because of his goal. If you'd wanted to tear it down and the price reflected that, That's a completely different conversation. And I actually never found out if he bought this because I was doing an inspection. I wasn't an agent at the time. And that wasn't my call to make. But that's kind of where I'm coming from, is like, I'm still in that mindset of it's not my call to make. I give the information. You make that choice. My job was to show him what he was looking at and let him go from there. So another category of deal breakers is the legal ones. Unpermitted work is more common than a lot of buyers realize, especially in older Seattle neighborhoods. There are finished basements, additions, converted garages, or electrical upgrades. Someone's brother-in-law has been really busy in this city, and they don't always get the proper permits. So the issue with that isn't always the quality of work. Sometimes the quality is just fine. The issue is what happens when you try to sell, refinance, or insure a house with work that was never signed off on. So no one can say, yes, this was done properly. And you inherit the problem the moment you close. It doesn't go back to the seller, it's yours. So sometimes it's more serious than that, though. Sometimes unpermitted work means a space can't legally be used in the way it's being presented. So a bedroom that doesn't meet egress requirements, that has had serious remodeling done, may have issues, and you may not be able to count it towards your bedrooms. A rental unit, maybe that was never permitted, or an addition that was never permitted and inspected, with a garage, all these things we talked about, the basements. So here's the question to ask yourself. Does this problem prevent the house from being what I need it to be? And if it's condemned, it's definitely not going to be what you need it to be. If you're buying a single family home and the unpermitted work just needs to be signed off on, that's manageable. But if it's like another home that I've come across where the owner tried to do his own foundation work and the house was condemned, and then it sat on the market when he tried to sell it because he couldn't afford to fix it right, he was in a bind. So this is why I'm looking for this issue before anyone writes an offer. Not because it's always a deal breaker, because you deserve to know what you're buying, what you're getting into, before you're legally obligated to own it and fix it. So let me show you now that you've been staring at this slide for a while. Let me show you what a legal deal breaker looks like in real life. So a family bought a property as an investment. They were very excited. They closed on the house and celebrated and started planning their retirement. Then the city showed up, uninvited as cities do, and the bottom floor was never permitted, which means it was condemned. And then it was worth a fraction of what they paid. The city, turns out, didn't care about their retirement plan, and they lost a lot of cash overnight because now they could only sell it as a duplex, and not until the condemnation was taken care of. So they had a big problem on their hands. Okay, so sometimes there are things that look scary, but they aren't. So let me show you what that looks like. There's a house. It's worth $2.6 million. It was built in 1936. A couple was receiving it from their parents, and they wanted to know, is this house as scary as we think? Like, what needs to be done here, and what have we gotten ourselves into, basically? There were water stains throughout the house. Turns out it was old staining, not active moisture. Thank goodness. This is some of what it looked like. There was plaster falling in the garage. It was cosmetic and not a structural failure, but it certainly looked scary. Then there was reseated mortar on the sandblasted brick. So it looked concerning, but it's definitely repairable and not going to be a huge problem right away. And then the next thing was that they were convinced that the house was sliding into the water, which it wasn't. I showed them signs of some settling. There was definitely signs of some settling, but it had been there for 90 years at that point and had only moved, a fraction. So it wasn't likely to go anywhere. So I was able to calm their fears with specifics and point out what was actually happening, not just platitudes. So that's my life coach credential and the technical knowledge working together. And that's what you get when your agent knows houses. All right. Secret number 2, how much house Can you actually afford? Here's something your lender won't tell you. Your mortgage approval is based on one number, which is your ability to make a monthly payment. That's it. They're not thinking about the roof that has 7 years left. They're not thinking about the furnace that's on borrowed time. They're not thinking about the appliances that are, as we speak, conspiring together on their exit. They're not thinking about the water heater, the sewer line that hasn't been scoped since the Clinton administration. They're thinking about one thing, whether you can make the payment. They're thinking about themselves, not you. That's their job. It's a fantastic job, but it's not the whole picture. Your job and mine is to think about everything else, because here's the truth. You can qualify for a mortgage on a house that you genuinely cannot afford to own, and that's going to be based on the house. And those are two different things. Qualifying to buy it, being able to afford it and live in it long-term are not the same number. And most people don't find that out until after they've already signed. So we throw around the phrase house poor, but I don't think a lot of people really understand what it means until they're living it. It doesn't mean you bought a bad house. It doesn't mean you made a stupid decision. It means you bought a house at the edge of what you could afford, and then the house asked for more. Houses do that. They'll wait. They lurk. They spring a repair that you didn't plan for, or a system failed at the worst possible time, and suddenly the house was supposed to give you stability is the thing creating the most stress in your life. It happens to smart, prepared people who did everything right, but because they were thinking about the mortgage and not what comes after the mortgage, and they didn't have someone to help walk them through that, it became a problem. So that's what we're going to fix today. So what does it actually cost to own a home beyond the mortgage? There are 3 buckets you need to think about. First is your regular monthly costs, the mortgage, taxes, insurance, any possible HOA fees. Most buyers know these going in. They know that number. The HOA fees are their own adventure, which is also a different webinar, but they can also be an issue. The second bucket is maintenance. Most people will tell you to set aside 1 to 4% of your home's value per year. It's a pretty wide range. It's not super useful when you're trying to actually plan. I mean, it's a good ballpark, but here's a more practical way to think about it. So for routine maintenance, you'll have $1 per square foot per year. So a $2,000 square foot home, budget $2,000 a year for maintenance. Divide that by 12, and that becomes $167 a month. You can write that down if you want. The third bucket is the reserves. This is the one people don't talk about as much, and a lot of people don't have the right kind of experience to be able to give you a good number for this. So every major system in your home has a lifespan. The roof, the furnace, the water heater, the appliances, who are, as we established, quietly planning their exit together because they always go out at the same time. They will all need to be replaced. And even your sewer line, you'll want to keep an eye on that because they have lifespans. And when they do need to be replaced, all of those things, it lands on you to replace them, right? Not the previous owner, not the home inspector. So if you haven't been setting aside money, that moment can be devastating. It's a separate number for maintenance. It's specific to the house you're actually buying and can swing wildly depending on the house, but it's fairly predictable if you know what you're looking for. So the calculator I'm going to give you in secret number 3 will help you figure out the third number for a specific home. When you combine that, the dollar per square foot maintenance number, you have a really good estimate of what the home is going to cost you every month to own beyond the mortgage. And that's the number the bank can't ever give you. Let's talk about Jim. Jim bought a home without planning for what would actually cost him to own it. He wasn't reckless or unprepared. He just didn't think about the third bucket, which is the replacements. And then the furnace died. I was a part of this story. I'm not Jim, but but I saw it firsthand. It was quite sad. But anyway, the furnace died, and it was a big bill. He couldn't afford to replace it, couldn't afford to fix it, and it was past the life where you'd want to fix it anyway. And so he could not afford to keep that house. And honestly, sometimes you get to that place and you can't afford to sell either. Luckily they could, so they ended up selling it, but it was a home that they loved. and they had to sell it because of one repair that they weren't planning for or saving for. So that's what being house poor looks like in real life. It's real. It's a real thing that happens. So are you afraid of these things? Stretch your budget. And then you get in the house and it's manageable, but just barely. Then your furnace dies. Then your roof needs replacing. And then you can't afford to fix anything or leave. This is what it looks like. And this space right here is what you'll look like if you get into that situation. Purchase price is what you pay to get in the house, but the systems are what you pay to stay in the house. And when you work with me, you'll think about both of those before you ever write an offer so that you don't become house poor. Well, let me tell you more about this house in Bonnie Lake. It was built in 2007. It's listed around $900,000, which was slightly above market for the area at the time. It was beautiful, though. It was move-in ready. It was the kind of house where people walk in and immediately start mentally arranging their furniture. And the buyers at the open house were all talking about paint colors. Me, on my way there to do the open house, I was driving like Cruella de Vil, wild eyes, and muttering about the replacement costs of the furnace lifespans and the roofs. And I was running numbers. Like I'm not kidding. I really was doing that as I was driving there. So I was like, built in 2007. Okay, roof is 19 years old. Furnace is probably original and at the end of life. Appliances were probably replaced, but either it was long enough ago that they're ready to be replaced, or then they just replaced them again. We'll see. I walked into that house knowing what I was probably going to find, and I was right. The furnace was at the end of the life. Roof had 5 years left. They didn't replace it. And the appliances were on borrowed time. So these things could still last for years. The thing is, you don't know. And when you're that close, you need to have some reserves to be able to replace them when it comes up, because you're not going to have any equity in your house yet. So within 5 years on that house, it had $35,000 to $40,000 in repair, maybe more. And this was a house that looked amazing, guys. It was so beautiful. And the candle smelled like money. The buyers that were walking through were picking paint colors, but I was doing the math. I was like, okay, we got to figure out what this house would cost for you, and is it worth it? Not above market price. Both of those things matter, whether you're picking paint colors or figuring out if you can pay for the house. I was the only one doing both. All right, secret number 3 gives you a way to calculate what we talked about in secrets number 1 and 2. Those 2 gave you a way to think, but now we're going to figure out how to actually calculate it, because thinking is free, but furnaces are not. So when you're standing in a house you love, trying to decide if you can actually afford it, you need a number, not a range, not a rule of thumb, a good estimate specific to that house. It's still going to be an estimate, right? We don't know the future, but it'll give you a really good idea. And that's what this tool does. So you'll take your replacement value, and we'll talk about this. I'll walk you through it. You take your replacement values, your estimated maintenance costs for the year, you spread it out over the lifetimes. And then with those 2 numbers, you have something a lot of buyers don't have before they make an offer. You just have a solid planning estimate of what the house will cost you to own every month beyond the mortgage. So let me show you how this works. Start with this ballpark idea here. Every house has major systems. Every one of them has a general lifespan, like we talked about. Let's talk about these major 5 here. So the roof in the Pacific Northwest, with our moss and our moisture, a well-maintained asphalt roof runs about 25 years. It doesn't last the full 30 years very often. Sometimes it's even less than 25. The moss, by the way, has already read the listing agreement, and it's refusing to move out. It has already notified its lawyer. The HVAC and furnace. It lasts about 15 to 20 years and costs 10 to 15,000. If you're talking AC and all of that, it's going to be more. So ask for the service records and know how old it is. If it's 18 years old, it's on borrowed time, and it knows it. Water heater lasts 7 to 10 years. budget $2,000 to $4,000 installed. It can be more depending on the kind you want. And you can always go find the kind you'd want to replace it with to know your exact number. The age is on the label. It's easy to find. I'll look it up every single time. And the appliances are not as expensive, but it's still good to know. A full kitchen suite costs $5,000 to $10,000, depending on how fancy you want to go. You can also, like I said, with the water heater, go look up prices so you know what they're going to cost you for the ones that you want. And that's the cost for the full kitchen suite. That's not one appliance, luckily. Another one to know is the sewer line. Clay, cast iron, cement, and no joke, in some homes, there are paper sewer lines. Someone at some point decided that paper was a good material for a sewer pipe. I'm not going to go on that rant right now, though. Sewer scope runs you anywhere from $300 to $400, but a failed line could be $10,000, $25,000, and upwards if it's under concrete. So scope it every time. It's a huge insurance policy. So these are ballpark planning numbers, right? They're not quotes. Costs will vary by home, by location, and by contractor. If you want specific numbers, you can go find them. These are just basic ideas right now. So, okay, let me show you how the calculator is going to work, right? We are going to do monthly reserves, and then we're going to add our maintenance number, and then we're going to add our mortgage to it, and then we're going to find out our real monthly costs. So let's go into that. I'm going to pull up the calculator here. All right, and we are going to run our numbers. Okay, if a system is already past its estimated lifespan on here, just put in the estimated lifespan number. It's going to throw off the whole thing. It'll give you negatives, and it's not that helpful. So when you hit that point, you're not thinking about monthly reserves anymore. You're thinking replacement costs, cash, or an ability to get that cash if when it is needed. So these numbers, like I said, are good estimates. It's not a guarantee. Costs are going to vary. Contractors are going to vary. Lifetime is going to vary. But it's a much better planning tool than a lot of people have. So let's go to our Bonnie Lake numbers. So property address, Bonnie Lake. You can put in the address if you want. You don't have to. Year built was 2007. And they were asking $875,000 for it. So now we'll go through these. So if it was built in 2007, like we said earlier, 19 years old for the roof. And you can see it'll give you the estimated years remaining, a ballpark replacement cost, and you can change these numbers here if you want. So this is telling you, okay, if you've got 6 years, for the next 6 years, every month, you've got to save $250,000. Gas furnace, same thing. 19 years old, but since the lifespan here is only 18 years, you'll want to just put that. It'll spit out. You have 0 years remaining, and you're going to want to think about this $17,000 here for replacement costs at that point. Water heater, it was 10 years old. It had been replaced, but was old again. But once again, we're not going to go past the typical lifespan. So you're looking at replacement costs for the water heater. The appliances were all aged out. Same thing, replacement costs here. The electrical panel was 19 years old, still the original. So it's got some time left. Sewer line, same thing, 19 years old. You can see these numbers are calculating as you put these in. The paint had been redone. Now this is going to be a harder number to find, and it may not be super helpful. If you're like, well, I don't know, I think it's maybe 10 years old, it would probably be better to look at, okay, how does this paint look, and when do I think I'm going to be repainting it? So if you're like, oh, I'm probably going to paint it in 5 years, then just, add 5 years so that it'll show that there's 5 years remaining, and it'll give you a good number there. Crawl space, vapor barrier. So this was, it was aged out. So you're looking at replacement costs there. Okay. Square feet, we'll plug that in because if you look down here, the estimated maintenance costs, it will figure that out for you. It was 2687 square feet. So then it'll divide it by 12 for you. So we'll give you your monthly maintenance cost there. And I can always get you an estimated mortgage cost, and then we can plug it in there. So for this house, mortgage payment with everything is estimated to be around $5,500. But really, you're going to want $6,100 a month for all your reserves. And then we got to go up here too and find our numbers. So $3,500 for the vapor barrier, $7,000, $3,000, $17,000. So let's add all those. So $30,500. You can plug that number in here. You're going to want access to that money, to that amount, that 30,000 soon in this house, because that's the things that have aged out. And then you're going to want to be able to have $6,100 a month. Those are the numbers for that house. You can run this on any house. And if you don't know the ages of things, that's what I'm here for. I can help you figure that out, or at least get close to knowing about how long something's going to last. This calculator is yours. When you registered for this training, it gets sent to you automatically. It should be in your inbox. You can use it. You don't have to use me to use that. It's yours. Plug in the systems, plug in the ages. It'll show you your monthly reserve number. Add $1 per square foot, right? Divided by 12 for that maintenance. And it'll give you a solid estimate of what you should be able to plan for that specific house. That's the number the bank doesn't show you. And they don't have a way of really doing it because it's so specific to each house. If that sounds overwhelming to you, hire me and we can do it together. Let's recap what we just learned, because I threw a lot of stuff at you and we covered a lot of ground. You can always go back and rewatch this anytime, but I want to make sure that this sticks. So secret number one, let's recap that. How do you know if a house is actually a deal breaker or a money pit hiding in plain sight, or does it just look like one? So will it make you house poor? There are knowable and unknowable things. If it's not a deal breaker, it's a negotiation. Secret number two, how much house can you actually afford? It's not the bank's number, it's your number. So 3 buckets are mortgage costs, maintenance, reserves. And remember Jim's furnace and the Bonnie Lake house that looked perfect. Don't end up being house poor because you're not looking at those numbers. Secret number 3 was the tool that gave you numbers, gave you something concrete to look at. Monthly reserves plus maintenance estimates equals your real monthly cost plus your mortgage. It's a good estimate. It's not a guarantee, but it's a far better number than anything you walked in with today. And for me, I'm always very conservative with it, so that you're more likely to have the money before you need it. You just learned things that most buyers don't find out until after they've already signed, and there is actual data on that. You know what a money pit looks like. You know what's scary versus what just looks scary. You know that the Moss has legal representation and the appliances are planning together their exit. And you have a tool in your inbox right now that will help you run the numbers on any house you consider. So that's a lot. And I'm genuinely proud and grateful that you showed up today and you're taking this seriously, because it is serious. It's a big decision. Here's what I want you to know. Everything we covered today is just the surface. When you're standing in a house you love, trying to figure out if it's the one, that's a different conversation. It's much more real. And that's where having someone in your corner who has looked very closely at nearly 1,000 homes, who will tell you the truth and genuinely cares whether this purchase makes your life better, that's where it changes everything. So if you want that person in your corner, I'd love to talk. You can grab a time directly on my calendar. I'll make sure you get the link to that. There's no pressure, no pitch, just a conversation about where you are in your search and how I can help. So before you head out, let me address some concerns you might be having. You might be thinking one of these things. One is, I'm not ready to buy yet. That's actually the best time to talk to leave with a clear picture of what you're looking for, what you can afford, what to watch out for when the time comes, and to get ready to be able to move. And we plant the seeds now so you're not scrambling later. The next you might be thinking is, I don't want a sales pitch. I hear you. I don't do that. I don't want to do a sales pitch. I sell clarity, not urgency. So if we get on a call and it's not the right fit or the right time, I'll tell you that honestly, and I'm not going to just bug you until you buy. Another thing you might be thinking is, I don't know if I can afford to buy in Seattle. That's exactly what this consultation is for. Let's look at your real numbers together, figure out what makes sense for your situation. You might be closer than you think, or you might need 6 more months, or you might need to have a very honest conversation about expectations and your price point. Either way, you'll leave knowing the answer. So set up a call, let's chat. I'm here to help, and here to help you find the perfect house for you.